Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about these lovely plants here, Pellionias. So I have two here at the minute. First off, the Pellionia pulchra with these crazy dark velvety leaves, almost black even. And then kind of the exact opposite, the variegated Pellionia repens, which is a gorgeous variegated one, very, very light and bright. And both of these have pretty much the same care, so I'm going to be talking about them today. But before we get into it, I want to say, if you are new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning. Now let us get into the care of these ones. So the common name for Pellionia, both the repens, which I don't have at the minute, I have propagated in the past, but I don't have, it's not really my cup of tea, and the pulchra here are both called the watermelon begonia vine, which is kind of weird because they are neither watermelons nor begonias, nor related to either of them, but I kind of see where they're coming from, especially with the pulchra. These kind of look like mini watermelons on here, and the leaves have that sort of asymmetrical shape that begonia leaves very commonly do. So I understand where they're coming from with that nickname, even though it is a bit of a misnomer. As you can see, the pulchra here has insanely gorgeous velvety leaves. They're a very, very fine velvet. Really beautiful with the sort of dark veination in there. I've had this one for several years now. I got it fairly early on in my plant care journey as like a sort of, I think I got it as a single cutting, and I have chopped and propped this one and given it away time after time after time. It is a very, very easy care one. I've never had to worry about it in the slightest. It has never put up any sort of fuss for me, which has been fantastic, and I have just loved growing it for this entire time. And then we have the variegated repens, which the leaves on this one are much more sort of like waxy, leathery. Like you can see the shine on it. It's not a velvety leaf at all, and the variegation on it, at least on my one, is quite high. I've seen some people have had them with lower variegation, but like it's full-on white in some of these areas. I've only had this one for maybe 6-8 months, but it has been an absolute favorite of mine during this time. Before we get into the care though, I should also say that I am growing both of these trailing. I find that they grow quite well trailing. They also can grow well as ground cover, and I've heard that the pulchra itself can shingle. You can kind of see it looks like it's got that sort of growth pattern. I've personally not tried growing them like that, but I quite like them trailing. I don't find that they like lose leaf size or anything like that. So I grow them like this and they're very happy, I think. Ideally, you're giving your Pellionias bright indirect light in their sort of natural habitat. They tend to grow as floor cover, kind of creeping along the surface of like the ground, and so they're not getting exposed to direct light pretty much at all, and in fact it can scorch their leaves. Mostly I've been growing them under grow lights. For quite a while I've had both of these in the cabinet. I only just took this one out of the IKEA cabinet in the last sort of couple of months, but it's been getting grow light its entire life. I've never really had it in a spot that it could get natural bright indirect light until now. I currently have it on top of my IKEA cabinet, and it is getting some grow light there, but it's also getting some sort of indirect light from the southwest facing window that it's about like a meter or so from. This one is currently still living in the IKEA cabinet, so right up next to a grow light to the point where it has burned itself a little bit. I'm not worried about it really at all. I am tempted to take it out of the cabinet, but because it is a variegated version, it will require slightly more light than the normal repens or even the pulchra would need, because anywhere where there's not sort of that dark green on the leaves, those parts of the leaves don't have chlorophyll, so they can't produce the energy that the plant needs to grow. And so it's going to need a little bit more light than sort of average repens would. So as long as I keep it in a bright spot underneath the grow light, I can kind of put this anywhere, I think. If either of them are getting too little light, you might notice that they start to get a little bit leggy in their growth and a bit more sparse. So if that's the case for you, maybe just put it in a little bit of a brighter situation. So I found the watering needs actually quite different between the two of them. That's kind of the only difference I give to them in care. The pulchra, which I've had for years and years, I have found that it's very, very drought tolerant. In fact, it is a little bit thirsty right now. I will give it water during this video, but I pretty much let the soil dry out all the way on this one. Sometimes I wait a little bit too long between waterings and it gets a little bit floppy, but I've never, it's never gotten to a point where it's detrimental. And I am generally a chronic underwaterer, and so if it can tolerate that, you know that this is a really, really hardy one. On the other hand, the variegated repens, the thirstiest creature alive. I have found this one so incredibly thirsty. For a while, I had kept it in soil because that's what it came in, and I wanted to just see how it would do like that. I was having to water it so frequently that I decided to switch it over to semi-hydro because that's where I put all of my high watering needs plants. I prefer it in semi-hydro because it'll always have a self-watering pot with a reservoir of water, so it always has access. But I still find that this one is so extremely thirsty. I'm probably having to water maybe 2 or 3 times a week in the spring and summer, more since the recent heat wave, maybe 1 or 2 times a week in the autumn and winter when it's not quite growing as fast, but that's still quite a lot for me. That is much more than most other houseplants in my collection, and I don't think that it is because it's in a smaller pot. The root systems on these guys don't tend to be massive, so they don't need to be in huge pots or anything, and so maybe that's why it gets thirsty so fast, but this one will show you if it is thirsty. It will basically get entirely floppy. It'll faint kind of like a Pellionia faints, or a nerve plant. And if you see that that's happened to it, just give it some water and it should perk back up again. These days though, I don't really let it get to that point if I can avoid it, because letting it get fully droopy too often can cause damage in the long run, so I try and make sure that the reservoir always has at least some water in it. If you are growing your Pellionias in soil, or any plants really, I highly recommend going off of a soil dryness based watering schedule as opposed to a time-based watering schedule. It's very difficult to say you should water your plant once a week because everybody's environment is different, the soil your plant is in is different, the weather changes throughout the year, and so going off of soil dryness is a much better way to figure out whether or not it's time to give them water. To do so, you can use a moisture meter or use your finger and just stick it into the soil and feel whether or not it is dry. You can see not much soil has come off on my finger there, and so it's time to give this one a water. Like I said, I knew that was the case, and so that's a better way to go about it. I tend to let the pulchra dry pretty much all the way down before giving it more water, whereas the variegated repens, I would probably only let it get halfway dry before watering again. Pellionias are pretty tolerant temperature-wise. Pretty much if you're comfortable in your home, they should be comfortable. Their ideals between 18 and 24 degrees Celsius or 65 to 75 Fahrenheit. So pretty much what you would want your home to be, that should be fine for them. I've personally not had any issues with temperature, even though it was boiling in my flat these past few days. Neither of them have freaked out about it or anything. So genuinely, I wouldn't worry too much about temperature unless they are by a sort of drafty window. They don't like massive fluctuations or irregular drops in temperature very quickly. So avoid drafty windows, putting them in front of air cons and stuff like that, because it could cause them a little bit of stress. A lot of people grow these in terrariums, and that is because they do like a good bit of humidity. They tend to like it quite high. That being said, my home has been generally okay. I have recently taken this out of the IKEA cabinet, and it's just living in my ambient home humidity, which is fairly high. I live in the UK, it is moist, and I've got a lot of plants, and so my average home humidity stays around 60% or so, which is perfectly fine for Pellionias. I've not had any issues with this one since I've taken it out of the cabinet, and I'm actually tempted to take the variegated repens out as well because it's just gotten so big in there that I don't think I'll be able to keep it in there for much longer at this size. And so it will just have to start growing in average home humidity. I have heard from people who also have the variegated repens that should be fine. Also, I should mention I haven't really seen people growing the repens out in homes as much. I feel like that one is much more of a terrarium plant, at least in my mind. I know this one kind of goes against all of that, but I really think of that one as one that really likes high humidity. I can't say for sure, but I believe that is the case. If you don't have like sort of 60% or higher, I would highly recommend getting something like a humidifier to boost. You can also group plants together because that naturally boosts the humidity, or get something like a pebble tray. Avoid misting, especially for velvety leafed ones. They're not gonna like it very much, and it actually doesn't boost the humidity like long term. I fertilize both of these with pretty much every water as much as I can remember. If I can be bothered to put fertilizer in my water, I will fertilize them, and I actually don't stop over the autumn and winter. Personally, I have an environment full of grow lights and high humidity and heating in my home, and so most of my plants tend to continue growing over the autumn-winter period, and so I can still fertilize them. If you notice your plants stop growing, do not fertilize them over winter. They don't need it while they're sort of like sleeping. But as long as you're noticing growth continuing to happen, you can keep fertilizing and it shouldn't be a problem. I personally use a houseplant specific fertilizer. There's a few different ones I like and would recommend: Liquid Gold Leaf, Formulex, and also Nurture System. All of those have been pretty good for all of my plants in general, and these plants aren't an exception really. So highly recommend those. If you are going to be using a sort of all-purpose fertilizer, I would recommend you dilute it down to maybe half strength, because those harsh fertilizers for outdoor plants can be a little bit intense on houseplant roots. Pellionias tend to have quite small root systems, and so they're not going to need repotting all that often. I think I might have repotted this one once in the time I've had it, maybe. I never really see it as something that needs to happen. The roots are like not even growing out of the bottom loads, so I'm not worried about it. If you notice your plant starting to dry out really, really quickly, that could be a sign that it needs a bigger pot. That doesn't apply for this one because it is just so thirsty on its own. I haven't actually looked at the roots on that one in a minute, so maybe let's do it now. There's no sort of roots growing out the drainage holes of the pot, which to me means that it is actually fine in what it's in right now. It doesn't need to be bigger for the size of the plant, which, I mean, proportionally this does look a little bit small, but because their root systems are so little, it's actually fine. Like I said, I do have this one in semi-hydro, and that has been perfectly fine for this one. It hasn't minded at all. I was a little bit worried about the transition from soil to semi-hydro because the roots on these are quite fine, and sometimes that can cause issues switching over. It didn't have any sort of issues with that transition, which is awesome. If you're going to keep yours in soil, which this one is, I'm pretty sure this one's in Soil Ninja's Monstera and Philodendron soil, but pretty much any tropical houseplant mix should do and be fine. I've also found propagation so easy for Pellionias. Like I've said, this one would be so much bigger if I hadn't chopped and propped it so many times over to give to other people. Because it's not the most common of plants, I like to share it because, I don't know, I just want more people to have it. It's a really, really cool one. And so I've chopped and propped it over and over and over again. Basically, all you need to do is make a cut just below a node, and I personally tend to remove the bottom 2, 3, 4 leaves on that cutting because that part of the stem is going to be underneath the propagation medium, and having the leaves in there could cause it to get a little bit rotty. So take those bottom leaves off if you can. I just like pluck them off with my fingers. It's pretty easy. And then I put it into my propagation medium of choice. For the pulchra, I've tended to do it in sphagnum moss. You could probably do it in water as well. If I were to prop my repens to go back into the normal pot, I'd probably do water because it is in semi-hydro, but honestly, whatever you're comfortable with would probably be okay. They're really easy rooters. And once they've rooted, you just pot them back up and you're good to go. You can also propagate these ones through division, I believe. You can see that mine has multiple vines in here, not just one. I'm pretty sure I originally started with one, maybe two cuttings. And so the fact that it has multiplied so much means that there is some probable way that I can divide this out to separate into multiple plants. I personally don't want to do that, and I've not tried it, but I'm pretty sure you can propagate that way as well. And another amazing thing about Pellionias is that they are non-toxic to cats, dogs, children, basically anyone who would accidentally ingest this plant. Probably not going to kill them, which is fantastic. You don't need to worry about rushing anyone to the vet or the pediatrician or anything. Ideally, you still don't want your pets to be eating your plants. It's not encouraged, and large amounts of ingestion of this could probably cause stomachache because it's not like food. So still like avoid it, but a little nibble here and there isn't going to cause any issues. So that is a plus for these. So that is it. That is everything I've learned about Pellionias over my years and years of growing them. I really love these plants, and I'm so excited that they're becoming more popular nowadays, especially with the variegated repens coming out. I've really seen them like come much more into the spotlight, which is very exciting. I'm glad more people are getting into them. Before I go though, I want to say a huge thank you to the newest members of my Good Growing fam over on Patreon, Vaughn, Ruth, Gabby, and Kristen. Thank you for joining in. I really hope you love it over there. If anyone else is interested in joining my Patreon, it is £3 a month, and for that you get all of the things like bonus content, live chats, access to the Discord server, like a little houseplant community that you can like be a part of, which is fantastic, but more access to me as well, which is fun. If you are interested, the link is down below in the description. Totally fine if that's not your thing, don't worry about it. Anyways, thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave me a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. If there's any other houseplants you'd like me to talk about, let me know. I do have a playlist of all of my houseplant care videos, which I will also link down below, so you can check that out if you're looking for anything specific. But if I don't have it, let me know and I can hopefully make that video for you in the future. Otherwise, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!